Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the live event today. I'm Dr. Maria Sampoulos. I have the pleasure of having Dr. Kurtis here today. Dr. Kurtis is a sublease owner with Walmart in Iowa. Hi, Doc. How are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. It's such a pleasure to have you. I met Dr. Kurtis on Instagram and saw all the great things that she was doing. And I said, we need to amplify her and get her voice out there and show other doctors what can be done in a sublease and what great things she's doing with that outside the sublease. So just a background on her. She graduated from ICO in 2005. And right away in 2005, she took a sublease with Walmart, which is pretty gutsy, by the way. Not a lot of doctors do that. Practicing full scope optometry, also a speaker for Alcon, and started investing right away in 2015 in investment properties, housing. Currently has 4 rental properties, right? And the goal is $1 million in real estate equity in 4 more years. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Quite the goal there, because a lot of doctors will say, I don't know if I can do this. I'm coming out of school. I have loans. You had the student loans. You took on a sublease, and then you started investing. You took risks. You've been successful. Tell us about yourself. Well, how do you get that motivation? How do you take those risks and not be afraid?
I guess I just didn't know any better. I don't know. Yeah, when I came out of school, I had looked at a couple of different spots, and I went to ICO in Chicago, so I was offered just a couple employed opportunities there. Walmart called me. I'm from Galesburg, Illinois, and the original lease that I had was in Moline, Illinois, which is about 45 minutes from where I grew up, and they said, hey, we have this opportunity opening up. Come interview. And so they offered it to me, and it was already a very busy location. The doctor that was there before me was just doing like more of the routine vision stuff. And back then that was kind of more common in Walmart because they did all of the insurance billing for those routine claims. So jumping into that, it was a little different than it is now as far as I didn't have to learn right away how to submit an insurance claim or get on a panel or all that stuff. And then I kind of grew from there. I had a really good mentor, Dr. Peter Kehoe, who previously was president of the AOA. He's from Galesburg as well, and I did a rotation in his office. And he gave me a bunch of books to read, and I kind of was like, oh, okay. And one of them was called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it really talks a lot about investing your money in assets, like assets that pay you back. Like, don't put your money in liabilities where it just goes away. So, the theory is if you want to buy a car and have a car payment, don't buy a car. Buy a rental property, get the income from that, and pay for your car, which is, a little easier said than done. But and then I remember the other books he gave were the Automatic Millionaire by David Bach, which just talks about automating all of your retirement investing, things like that. So that's the first thing I did. When I started working, I just put money into a SEP IRA. I didn't know anything about it. I still really don't, but I have, money sitting in there and it grows. And that book also gave you a very organized plan of how to organize all your finances and just keep everything in order as far as what insurances you need, and that kind of thing, like life insurances and disability insurance and all that stuff. And then the other book was called The Millionaire Next Door, which talks about, you don't have to drive $100,000 car. People that really are millionaires in today's society are just very low-key people, people that you would see shopping at Walmart, and you would never guess that they're a millionaire because they've invested their money and saved their money.
That's so true. That's so true. I always say that the one wearing the T-shirt and jeans and driving the Ford truck has more money than the Mercedes person. And it's so true. It's where they allocate their money, where their value is, right? Everyone's different on what they want. I mean, we're not saying don't get that car, but be responsible, pay your bills off first. If that is your dream car and you want it, just work for it first, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So, then in my optometry career path, I started with that first location. And like I said, back in 2005, Walmart they did all the insurance routine vision claim filing. And then right off the bat, I did buy a retinal camera. And then shortly after that, I bought an OCT, which, back in those days was like, even like, the big fancy practices didn't have them. Like there was an ophthalmologist in my town, and I asked her, I was like, well, what brand do you have? Like, she was like, well, I don't have one of those. Those are like only for retina specialists. And I was like, okay, well, I'm getting one because I want one. So. Yeah. And, it's one of those things too, where you look at those things and, before you buy something like that, you have to look at it and say, like, how am I going to pay? How is this going to pay for itself? Like, what am I going to charge? What are the fees? Like, what patient population do I have, that I can use this on and, benefit all my patients? So it's super important, to have this technology, I think, to serve our patients, but it's also super important as a business person to know exactly like, how is this going to pay for itself? And like, what do I need to charge? How many of these scans do I need to do in a week or a month or whatever? But, I would say to anyone that hasn't invested, that's in a corporate setting and hasn't invested in that advanced technology, like you really want to do it. I do believe that Walmart is offering the TopCon Maestro now in your lease, not just for employed doctors, but I talked to someone from the home office and they said he didn't know the exact price, but it was something like $400 a month, which is not bad at all. I mean, you can look at just doing like a screening, kind of thing, and you wouldn't have to do a ton of them to cover
well, even if it's just patients, right, that are glaucoma suspects and just take photos, exactly. $80 a photo. I mean, five patients a month covers it, right?
Exactly.
And it helps your practice grow. And I think that's something nice to be said about Walmart trying to build your practice more medical. And when you first came out and everyone was doing routine eye exams, did you get any pushback from Walmart about you doing retinal, OCT, or anything else like that?
No. I've always had a good relationship with my market manager, and they were always kind of the mindset, like, this is your practice. We're here to support you. And as far as like on the Walmart side, another doctor that was in my region, his name is Eric Bott. He was also a big mentor for me that really helped kind of push me in that direction of, kind of take the plunge into that medical optometry side. And he actually ended up starting a company called Optometric Billing Consultants. And I would always joke with him that, I was the reason why, because I was like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, how do I do this? How do I do this? So he kind of got a little group together of like local doctors, and he was like, walked all of us through like step by step, like, this is what, HIPAA looks like, and this is what you do. And like, he put together a thing of like, if you have this diagnosis code, these are the procedures that you can bill. So he was huge, like very helpful. So, that's another thing too, is just find a mentor, find somebody that has done it, is doing it, and, can point you in the right direction.
Yeah, we know him. He is in the group and, published some articles, and he's out there in the industry speaking now nationally and things like that. So it's great to have a corporate OD really get speaking opportunities in the industry, and really expand what, the myths and bust those myths in the industry of what corporate ODs do. Now you came out of school and, you had student loans and you took it, but now, you had 4 or 5 locations at one point and have a child. How do you do that work-life balance? How do you take the risk? Because a lot of women are in this situation, and a lot of them might be nervous to take on a new business, take multiple businesses on, and think they can't, be what they need to be as a mom.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to balance everything. It is, especially when I had the multiple locations. The most I had was 5, and that was only for a 1-year duration because I added 2 Sam's Clubs in there. But I had 3 for a decent amount of time. And just, I think the most difficult part was, finding good doctors that provided high level patient care, were on the kind of the same page as me. And, just, I think one thing that I try to do now that I don't always do is just making sure, if I need to take a day off for myself, or I need to take a day off to be with my son or whatever, that I just do it. And, there's not, the world is not going to end if I miss a day of work. So, but it's difficult, but it can be done. I mean, you need to have good people. For a long time, I didn't have my own staff. I only used the Walmart staff. And that's one thing that I would definitely encourage, is get your own employees that work directly for you, because that's really going to help you expand your business when you have someone just doing exactly what you want them to do, and how you want it to be done, and not having to worry about like scheduling or new employees and that kind of thing. But yeah, coming back to, being a mom, and that it's difficult. It can be done. I don't have any great words of wisdom on that, but
well, it seems like you want to do it, right? So if you're determined, you're going to do it. You have these goals you set, and you reach them, and no obstacle is there. So what motivates you to keep going when, it's been a bad day, or the house is a mess, or, something, your kid is acting up, it's always that something, right? Or
yeah,
it's like 2 loads of laundry,
Oh, the laundry never ends. But I think just, if I have goals and I write them down, and that's part of the reason that I started that Instagram account, was just so I can put it out there. Because if you have a goal and you write it down, and you know what you're working towards, and you know what you want, you can make your decisions in your day-to-day life based on that, like, okay, I want to have more time with my family, more work-life balance. Like, then, maybe you don't want to do certain things. Or if you're like, I want to, expand my real estate portfolio, and I want to reach this certain point. And maybe you'll set a goal that's lofty, or you think is unattainable. But if you make your decisions day to day based on like, is this going to point me in the right direction? Is this going to set me toward my goals? Then maybe you'll change your day-to-day decisions, and make more time for things like that, and put more time, more effort into doing those things that are going to get you closer to your goals.
How did you get interested in real estate property rentals?
I don't know. It was just something, like I said, it went back to when I first graduated, and reading that Rich Dad Poor Dad book, that kind of put the bug in my mind. And I was investing in my IRA, and it was basically the most boring thing in the world. And, it's something like, I'm never going to see this money for, at that point, like 30, 35 years, whatever. I'm closer now. And, real estate always seemed like it was something like, okay, I can invest in that now. And it's something that's going to generate a monthly return. So every month you're going to see money coming into your account. And so that's kind of what got me started thinking about it. And then I just started looking at properties, and talking to other people, friends and stuff that I knew that had invested in real estate, and saw, it's not that hard to get into it, especially when you're a higher earner, like an optometrist, to save up 20% down on an investment property. You're not going to buy $1 million house. I think most of the homes that I own were about between 160 to 180. So, 20% down, and just we've just done conventional financing, but there's tons of different ways that you can get into real estate investing too. So, but yeah, I think it was just more of that hands-on approach, as opposed to like the hands-off investing in like retirement accounts and that yeah. Kind of got me excited about it.
At first, it's probably like a little tough, like you get a little nervous, right? But once you get rolling, it's like, all right, where's the next one? What's the next opportunity, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Because like after like we got the first one, it's like we were like, preparing and like doing all this stuff, and then we did it. We're like, we put a renter in there, and we're like, oh, like now we just get checks every month, and like, obviously you have like maintenance issues and things like that pop up here and there, but then after like the first one, then you're like, oh, like we should do this again. Like,
How do you
But
look for those opportunities? How do you know what house to purchase that's right, right? Because the listeners of this podcast are all over the country, right? So houses are a lot different everywhere, but the values always go up. You never really lose money on houses, right? And if you're not a handyman, OD, or your husband's not, sometimes you want to get the newer stuff, right? It might be easier, so you're not getting those phone calls. If you are a handyman, you have time. But I think I always say, like, if you are self-employed like yourself, you're making more income than the average OD, and you actually have we can manage your time to take care of those other things like real estate and taking stuff like that, where if you need to leave a certain time you can to go handle that, where you're kind of locked in if you're employed. Am I correct?
yeah, that's true. And so we have 3 properties locally where we live, and then we do have one in Indiana, which is where my husband grew up. So the areas that we invest in and that we're comfortable investing in are areas that we are very familiar with. Like, we know what the property values do. And there's certain areas where I live in the Quad Cities where the houses do not appreciate. You may have more cash flow every month, like based off, what you put in and what you're getting back, but the value doesn't go up. There's all kinds of resources online. Like, you can look up, where cities have high crime areas, things like that, like that you want to avoid. So once you get into looking into it, they'll like rate, like A properties, B properties, C properties. So we try to stay in like that B range, which is like a nice area. We always look for like the top school districts, because that's a big thing, because all of ours are family rentals. And we just kind of have a certain criteria that we want to look for, and those are the houses that we go for.
What are some criteria? Are you looking for like 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, large yard? I mean, you want to attract families, right? So I was always told, like, at least when you look for something, at least 3 bedroom, right? Because even if you can rent it, but even if you need to turn around and sell it, you'll still get your money back. You'll still be able to sell it, have value.
Exactly, yeah. And so the houses, yeah, typically 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. We have a couple houses that we have purchased. We have actually added bathrooms too, just so they would meet that criteria. And then, yeah, school district is a big one for us, because we live in Iowa, and in the area that we live in, there's a couple of school districts that are top 10 in the state. And then there's some that are just not good, very low rated. So, you want to make sure you're staying in the area. The other thing in the area that we invest too is there is a floodplain. So you want to stay away from that, because the insurance is like more than tenfold what it would be for a house that's outside of the floodplain. So
yeah, those are some things, yeah, that are important that people probably overlook, don't even know till after they're in it. And yeah. How do you screen renters, right? How do you know who to put in there so there is a cash flow every month, so you're not having those phone calls, or you're on your lunch break to look for the monthly rent?
That's a tough question. I mean, we have post our properties. We use a property management software called Avail. And through Avail, you put all your pictures and everything in. And then once you're ready to list it, it puts it out on like all these different platforms. I don't need like rent.com and Zillow and all those. So then you get a lot of applications coming in. And then, once they get past a certain screening process, and my husband does a lot of this, then we'll meet with them at the property. So it kind of just goes by like meeting them, income verification. Are they looking to stay there for a long time? Like, is it somebody that you think is going to take good care of the house? And I mean, it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you think, okay, this is, a nice family. And, we had one recently where they moved out. They told us they were moving out, and they said, oh, we'll be out by the end of the month and it'll be ready to rent to the next renters. And they had completely trashed the place, like holes in the walls. They left piles and piles of garbage. They just left everything there. The sink was full of dirty dishwater. I mean, like, it was like a hoarder house. And we were like, when we had been through there, like during the 3 years that they were there, and it wasn't like that. And then like all of a sudden it just turned, and it was, so we're still in the process of cleaning that up, but we do have a a tenant that's in there now. So, stuff like that's going to come up. You just need to have reserves and be prepared to deal with that. Not everything is sunshine and rainbows, but the first house that we bought, we've had the same renters in there the entire time. And they're not planning on leaving. And, they rarely complain. They take great care of the property. So I wish I had a magic crystal ball or way to say oh yeah, this is how you pick the perfect renter. But if you have
it's kind of like Nick, you never really know, right? But I think if you had a good renter, like the first one, and if they're paying their rent, you don't want to raise their rent. I mean, unless you have to because taxes or whatever. But how do you determine the rent, or how do you determine what you want to pay for a property to make sure it's going to be of value for you to invest instead of primary residence?
Yeah, so typically there's kind of a general rule of thumb called the 1% rule. Like if you look at rent in the area and what's it going for, like if we bought a house that was $180,000, let's say you'd want to be able to get $1,800 a month in rent. And that doesn't always you may not get all the way to that. If you take into things like appreciation and things like that, if you invest in an area that appreciates more, it may be a little bit less than the 1% rule or whatever, but that's kind of a general rule of thumb. And you can find online calculators and things like that where you can put in all the property taxes and what expenses you think will be, that kind of thing, to kind of see what the monthly cash flow would be. But the general rule of thumb is that 1% rule.
So you want to be able to pay this off in 10, 12 years each house, ideally, or?
Yeah, I would say, and that depends on, some people just want to be leveraged to the max and they just want to, they think there's all kinds of different theories on real estate and if you should ever even pay it off, or, just keep borrowing money on it, that kind of thing. Typically what we've done is taken out a conventional mortgage for 15 years. The first house that we bought has been, I guess, close to almost 7 years now. And we are putting extra towards that because we want to get it paid off. We'll have it paid off probably in the next couple of months.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks. And then, so our plan with that is we're going to open up a HELOC. Do you know what that is? A home equity line of credit. So basically, okay, so if we own this house and it will be worth roughly $200,000, we'll say, you can take out what's called a home equity line of credit.
Okay, yeah.
It's basically just kind of like you would have, and they'll usually give you 80% loan to value. So you have $160,000 available once we do this. And what that will give us the opportunity to do is to make cash offers on homes. So if you want to buy a house from a wholesaler or, a distressed home, a foreclosure, something like that, you have to pay cash. A lot of people will do hard money lenders, private money lenders, which is asking your family, can I borrow money to buy this house? I don't want to do that. So a lot of people
you've been very smart in debt. I mean, a lot of optometrists are not that savvy and they're bogged down by student loan debt and buying a house and, buying that expensive car because, I work so hard in optometry school and I deserve this car and I deserve not to work Saturdays because I think, but then, you have to work Saturday. You have to do that to pay off the loans, right? And you've been pretty savvy. In one of our conversations, you said that your student loan debt was what percent?
So my student loan, when I graduated in 2005, it was the lowest consolidation rate in history up to that point. So it was originally I want to say 2.75, and then I got a quarter off for doing the auto draft, and then a 1% deduction for on-time payments in 4 years, and then another deduction for on-time payments for 8 years. So it's at 1% right now. And I have not paid it off. I borrowed $183,000, and I still owe around the low 70s, but it's at 1%. So
it's at 1%. So why pay it off when you can use that to purchase houses? I mean, right now you have 4 rental properties, right? Your goal is to have $1 million in real estate equity in 4 years. I think that's a great goal to have. I think you're, breaking barriers in optometry with having, business and having a family and doing it. Walmart, you've been pretty successful with, right? I mean, you're able to make good income because of, probably the low rent and things like that at Walmart, and able to expand, right? I mean, it's just the issue of finding a doctor, unfortunately. So to be able to do that, right? So, but you're also smart about investing money and moving money around for good debt. So I think, can you explain to the listeners good debt versus bad debt so they can kind of understand?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before, like, borrowing $100,000 to buy a Tesla is not good debt. Having a credit card balance that you're paying 23% interest on is not good. Borrowing money to buy an asset like a rental property that's going to generate more money in return would be considered good debt. And even I think, a mortgage on your primary residence is not considered bad debt because it's not depreciating. You don't want to borrow money to buy a depreciating asset or something that's not going to give you a return on your investment. Like, I guess theoretically an OCT is a depreciating asset because, 5 years after you buy it, it's not going to be worth, $40,000, whatever you paid for it. But in that 5 years, it certainly will have generated more income than, what you paid for it. So
a lot more. A lot more. Yeah. And you need it in your practice nowadays, standard of care. And it's also practice build, all this other stuff that doesn't have like real, let's say, value money rise, but still grows your practice. How did you come up with this goal of $1 million in equity?
It was just one of those things where, in my mind, I was like, okay, that would be roughly about 5 properties of the properties I have now are generally, like I said, I paid about $160 for most of them, and most of them are worth about $200. So if I had 5 paid for properties, I could generate enough income, to pay all of my bills, my own personal mortgage, my student loan payment. And so that was kind of where I got that number. And it's just a round number. And, I don't know, I think I can do it. I think just because some of the properties, like I said, that are on 15-year mortgages and that I've had for, 7 years, I think I bought one in 2015, one in 2016, one in 2017, and then I had a 5th one in there that I sold, and then I bought another one last year, my 4th one last year. So, and like I said too, like once I have that home equity line of credit, I have more, and those are typically I do have home equity lines of credit on other homes now, and they're like 3.9% interest. So again, it's low interest, and you can, make a cash offer on a home. So you're gonna, with a 1-week closing, so you're going to be the most appealing buyer for the seller. And then once you've had that home for 6 months and you've cleaned it up and fixed it up, then, if you want to refinance it, then you can just, then you go to the bank and, they'll give you the loan to pay off the HELOC and then just kind of stabilize the property and then help you with the payment. So
how can doctors, maybe that are employed that want to have their own practice, let's say, I mean, some doctors want corporate, some want private. Could they kind of do that too, to have a cash offer, maybe to buy a practice or something else? Do you think that works that way? I'm just thinking outside the box.
Like with the home equity line of credit?
Something, I don't know. I'm just saying, I guess that would be only if they own the building, the doctor, I guess. So, yeah. And that'd be it. They couldn't use it for anything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good goal to have. Somehow I feel that once you reach that million, you're going to try to go for two. So I mean, I mean, you're still pretty young. So I think once you get there, once you meet that goal, you're going to get bored, and you say, what else is there to do? I mean, I think that's the type of person that you are, right? You kind of want to succeed and set goals and reach there, and once you get bored, it's hard. So
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
to kind of sit still.
that's a fair assessment. You know, I do tend to stretch myself a little thin. I know you had mentioned too, like I do speaking for Alcon, so you know, that's something as well, like about twice a month. You know, in the last year, I think I've gone to California a couple times, Idaho, Utah, New York, Texas a handful of times. I have a couple Kansas City trips coming up, another
Nice.
Texas, Washington, like all over, you know, and it's like you fly there for a day, you fly home. So yeah, I don't know that I'll be sitting idly like but I will, you know, if I guess it's just about having the option, like if I, you know, because I talked to another doctor who is in a different setting, you know, maybe like when we're in our 50s or something like that, like we, you know, like she would come into my practice and we would both work, you know, part-time and still be able to make six figures working, you know, 2.5 days a week is, you know, something that
is appealing. Yeah. And I think you can do that in a corporate setting. You don't, so a lot of doctors do make six figures working, you know, 4 days a week, 3 days a week. I mean, you don't have to work 5-6 days a week with this misconception within the corporate setting that they have. And Walmart's not, a lot of doctors don't work 7 days a week. It's only if they choose to work that Walmart doesn't do. So that, and then what is great, what I hear here is that you're able to, besides your Walmart sublease, expand to other things. And Walmart does not interfere, right? If you're passionate about speaking for Alcon, it's like, you can do that. They're pro. It's great, right? You want to advertise and tell doctors about real estate and do that. You have that income, right? From that initially started at Walmart, and now you've been smart about it, not to work more hours harder and leverage those investments to work for you. And I think that's very smart, because we don't get a lot of financial education in optometry school or in life. And the other thing I want to tell the listeners is your parents weren't optometrists. So you're self-made in the industry. Like, you've done it by yourself. You've been successful. You haven't had, like, you had a mentor, but you didn't have like a sponsor who's like, hey, let me pull you up. Like, really, you had to do the work, and you can do it if you want to. And Dr. Kurtis is an action of it. I mean, I think it's inspiring to have you on the show to hear all the great things that you're doing. I want to thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I think a lot of the listeners will get a lot of information from you, and we'll keep you up on the story. Maybe we'll have you back in a couple of years to see if once you reach your $1 million mark, and and to see if you're going to stop. But I have a feeling that you're just going to say, hey, Maria, I just want to do 2 million now, you know, and yeah, I'm getting a little bored. I need something else to keep busy. And so I applaud you with all the work that you're doing, and doing it successfully, because I think you set the bar up high for a lot of optometrists, and something for people to look up to.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like you say, set the bar high, but you know, I was an average student. I'm not like some kind of super go-getter, you know, but if you just, you know, educate yourself and set goals, you know, most things are attainable. So yeah, don't sell yourself short, because, you know, I'm not some kind of like genius or like, you know, whatever, but
I'm not smart either. I always say, hey, I'll be the hardest working person in the room. I don't do the smartest, but they have this saying that, you know, the A students are good doctors. The B students are okay. And then the C students make the most money. So
yeah, that's like that. You can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining the podcast. And if anyone wants to email you, do you have an email address that you can provide?
Yeah, it's saracurtis16@gmail.com.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me, Maria.
Thanks.